the way America was structured in the past, and obviously times have changed in the last 200 years, was designed in such a way that no one group of power, whether it's the president, the executive branch, legislative, or judicial, no one of them has absolute power. Because if you do, then this is just a totalitarian regime.
Right. I mean, but I feel like what's interesting there is I agree, and I think most Americans would agree, but something that I want to kind of get into a little bit more is how the degradation of our social systems has led to this extreme polarization among people. And that polarization among people has actually led to changing the way those balance and checks and balances that exist in our system operate. So that's, I think, the key point there that, I eventually want to come to is that, yes, the system was designed in a certain way, but it's actually not functioning the way it was designed due to a hyper-partisan electorate. And, that has consequences for not only just, the specific legislation. It's not like the Green New Deal versus, the wall. Like, that's not the difference that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the norms and the established principles that our country was founded upon. And, I would argue to a certain extent, as we've grown from left to right, it's not been so much of a disagreement among, specific policy, but it's a specific disagreement onto how we want this country to look in the future. And that's something that, is a social problem more than a political or economic problem.
Here's the thing, right? Let's say, for example, we did scale the Senate to accommodate for population size. What would end up happening is in those specific states like New York, California, Texas, Florida, maybe Pennsylvania and Ohio, what will end up happening is the politicians will be hell-bent on conquering the voting there so that they can have the most influence in the Senate because of the numbers. So even though I understand that it's like, oh, well, California has 8 million and Wyoming has 1 million or whatever, the scaling doesn't match. The problem is if you started to scale it properly, each senator has the same amount of power. So if you gave like 8 senators or 10 senators to California, all the politicians are going to like fight over California, which will lead to a power imbalance because, now it's turning into a numbers game rather than a belief of society, rather than expressing the beliefs for the well-being of the country, people are just going to be looking for power. So
right.
even if
Which I will say is inherent to human nature, despite any system or social structure that we put in place.
No, bad people always try to go for power. It's true.
Yeah, well, I guess we're all bad. I have that. There's a cynical view to that in a way, but no, I mean, no matter what, the way I see it is that there's always going to be some way, shape, or form that we're going to have to, as a human being, try to obtain that type of power. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how high your moral standards are. Some people are corruptible. Our morality is dispensable, which is so terrible to say, but
it's case by case. Every person is different. I like this phrase. I know it's a generalization, but I really like this phrase is that smart people don't go into politics, I know it's a generalization, I know, so no offense to people who are pursuing the role of politician. But the thing is,
I don't want to be a politician.
Oh.
I do not want to be a politician.
Really?
No.
Political science doesn't need to be a politician, Pete.
Yeah, no, I just because I study political science does not mean I want to be a politician.
Well, actually, that was my impression of you for the longest time.
No, yeah, that's not a correct impression. I do not want to be a politician.
Yeah, I'm going to get roasted now because this is my own teammate, man.
The more you know, we're all learning something new today. And the reason I like this expression is because when you're a politician, you basically, in a way, get free money, and influence over people. And you don't really need any skills, you just need to convince people to vote for you. It's true.
Well, that in itself is a little bit of a skill. But I actually want to reframe this conversation a little bit and push back on something that you said a minute ago. The idea that, I think what you were getting at before is the idea that like the Senate would be less responsive to people in rural states and less populated states, specifically if they made the Senate proportional, for example. And I know, the Senate is not, obviously, it was never designed to be proportional, but that idea of responsiveness is actually really key to understanding some of the main issues with the problems going on in this country now.
Like what?
I feel so right. So the responsiveness key is like what every group in this country who doesn't agree with what the government is doing to some level feels that there's a level of unresponsiveness to their specific views. And that's really important in understanding like how it is. And so if you are arguing that, let's say a small rural community in Wyoming, the least populous state, should have as much say as a large metropolitan area, that may be your opinion, but then you have to start to unpack the idea of what does a democracy really look like if a lot of the population is feeling like their views aren't being heard. And so again, it's always a toss up, and you have to kind of play that game to a certain extent and balance it as best you can. But there's definitely an idea here of responsiveness that's really an important key to not just democracy. I feel like that term is overused, but governing as a whole. That the legitimacy of government hinges on this idea of responsiveness to the people. And if you make it unresponsive, then you deal with all of the other problems that come along with that. Talking about the Senate being unrepresentative, to how a lot of critics call the Electoral College unrepresentative as well. I mean, it's the same. It's a critique that a lot of times the left levels against the Electoral College, that it's unrepresentative. Dense urban areas aren't counted as much, and states with generally more conservative white voters are able to drive the national conversation because of their state's electoral importance in the Electoral College rather than the general population. And it basically skews the national conversation to a slightly more conservative tilt.
You say that, but here's a funny story. So one time my friend's father, he said something that was very simplistic but very thought-provoking for me. He basically said, when Trump was elected, everyone was just screaming, everyone was upset. Oh, he didn't win the popular vote. Oh, Hillary won by 2 million people, 3 million people. This is an outrage. Our vote doesn't matter. Our vote doesn't count. And the father said, well, listen, these were the rules. This is how it was structured. And Trump won by this rules. This is how it was designed. If you change the rules to the popular vote, then more people would probably come out to vote.
Right.
So here's the thing. Now, this is an assumption on my part, complete assumption, but California is extremely leaning towards, it's a blue state
right.
through and through.
Right.
And no offense to anyone, but a lot of people are not very educated in certain parts of California. And I'm sure most of them don't know how the Electoral College works. So in their minds, I assume, this is an assumption, I can be 100% wrong, but in their minds, they probably think their vote really matters.
Right.
Whereas in somewhere like New York, I didn't vote because why should I? It doesn't matter. It's going to be blue. It has to be blue. There's no way it'll be anything else but blue. So the point I'm trying to make is, how many people? I think 100 million people vote, roughly, 100, 150, 160. So that's how many people come out to vote. The population of America is 400 million. So that means almost 2/3 of the population did not even try. They didn't care. So this is obviously a hypothetical. There's no guarantee Trump would win if it was based on popular vote. There was no guarantee if Hillary would win. But the point I'm trying to make is, the America designed the Electoral College this way. If you change the rules to popular vote, do you think all the people who now wouldn't vote in certain states like California or New York, they'll now come to vote?
Generally, I guess the short answer to that question is generally yes. I feel like the more popular the states are in dense urban areas, generally speaking, there's a lot of population there. But I think what's the more interesting point that you bring up, in my opinion anyway, is the idea of kind of if and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the idea of like an incompetent democratic citizen, people with like without the capabilities or cognitive ability to make rational decisions, at least in your mind. And that's actually
I don't think
sorry.
I don't think it's purely Democrat because there are red states, I believe, like Arkansas, who I believe their education is not the best either. And I'm sure if I went to a couple other southern states, or even because they're mainly red, I'm sure I could find a lot of uneducated people. But the point I'm trying to make is, there are certain states that are like always blue or always red.
Right.
So if you're a red guy in a blue state, why would you vote?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It adds an incentive. A popular vote would add the incentive that the Electoral College takes away. To vote.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. I mean, I'm very split on the idea of the Electoral College. I mean, I think there's people who are a lot smarter than me who come to different conclusions on both sides. I do think an important part of the Electoral College that should be almost mentioned as like a little asterisk is the idea of elite gatekeepers being able to kind of not to sway the conversation, but it's a little bit of a way to make sure people don't go and have elect some crazy demagogue. But to a certain extent, I feel like that's
what'd you say, demagogue?
Like a demagogue, yeah.
What's
like
that?
A I don't know. I mean, like a irrational leader who is. I'm sure you could find a better internet definition, but someone who is just basically appealing to people's worst instincts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, basically a person that appeals to prejudice and irrational desire.
Right, and I think there's certainly an argument
like
to be made.
Candidate.
Yeah. I mean, no, but I think the interesting point there, though, is that what you're kind of skirting around the edges there, and that's something that I actually agree with you 100%, is that some people just are not particularly informed enough to make rational decisions about politics. And, I think that goes for, it's not really a question of like, what political side you're on, but it's the ability to like understand and like the ability to understand and synthesize so much complex information to make a rational decision on, what policies are going to best affect you. I mean, we see this so much in, people who are farmers, for example, who voted for Trump, and the Trump tariffs actually really hurt him. But they didn't see the, tariffs. That was kind of slid in, in the back end of it. They actually voted for him because of the sociocultural stuff. So, again, I think it's important to, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't vote because they're too stupid. And that's, I feel like, the simplistic version of my argument as well. But I do feel like there's a problem with civic education in this country that like people just truly don't have the requisite capacity to make these complex decisions in this democracy.
Yeah.
And democracy requires that, is the key point.
I think that's what Alex means when
Yeah.
he says you can go to California and find uneducated people, and you can go to, I don't know, Georgia or like a red state and find uneducated people. You're going to find uneducated
Right.
people everywhere because there is an improper system to promote, like you said, civic education.
Right.
And I think that's
the reason
shame.
why I reference California, Zach, is because if you removed California's popular vote, Trump would have won by a landslide, by the popular vote.
Sure.
Like many millions of people, the difference would be.
Sure.
And that's why I was referencing that. And it would only get worse if you did states like New York and Massachusetts as well.
But I mean, that's
which
kind
is
of
not to say their voice doesn't matter, but
Right.
like I'm just telling you, there's a skew in like the population, like the way the current system is with the Electoral College. It's like, yes, Hillary won the popular vote, but we're not using the popular vote, so there's a bit of a skew. There's a bit of a bias towards Hillary in that regard.
I guess I'm not quite grasping like what exactly your point is. I mean, yes, if you remove a certain part of the country, like if you removed all the red states, then obviously, so I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying in the big states that stereotypically have been blue, there is like a heavy skew, like really heavy. Most other states like Pennsylvania were almost 50-50, and Florida as well. Like there were many states that were like close. But then there are like two states that are like way
Right.
biased.
So what exactly?
And I feel
is
like
the-
the point is, like, we're using the electoral college system. For better or for worse, that's the system we're using.
right.
So popular vote, in a sense, doesn't matter.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you lost the popular vote, but we're not playing by the popular vote. So all those people that went to California and New York who, like, made the numbers really big, it didn't do anything.
Sure.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? If you change it to popular vote, then their vote would matter.
Right.
But the theoretical issue here is, would Trump have won the popular vote if everyone's vote now matters?
Right.
Because,
I
like
see
I
what you're
said,
saying,
two-thirds of the people didn't show up, because when you're in New York or California, it's like, are you stupid?
Yeah.
Like, your vote means nothing there.
I mean, I think that's true 100%. I mean, I think that all like the, all the people on the left saying that, he's not my president and everything, like, of course he is. I mean, he won. Yeah, no, I mean, that's just stupid. And I don't think anyone, who actually thinks about this stuff really would believe it on either side of the political spectrum. But, what's scary, this is just a more tangent point, but what's scary is I think we're going to have a major problem in this next election.
Oh, baby, don't even get me started.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I've written essays actually to some of my professors asking about, specific questions, how the system is going to hold up if we're all not able to vote in a way that makes sense, and if we lose legitimacy in like the most important tenet of our democracy, which is elections, then it could all fall apart very quickly. And but that's a tangent. But I feel like
That's true.
the point is still, I
but-
agree with what you were saying before, by the way. I like, popular vote is irrelevant until we change to a popular vote system.
Right. I've said this to Pete before. I read a book called Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville.
Not a big fan.
I knew you would.
You read it too?
Not a big fan.
You read
yeah,
it?
I mean, I've read it a lot in my classes and stuff. But
So one thing he made it, that one point is that in America, in the past, obviously in the 1800s, he wrote that the American people at the time didn't really care about the president. They didn't care. Like, they were more focused on communities and
Yes.
like the community law and the respect and acknowledgement of people around them in their vicinity, rather than the nation itself. And while it has been 100 years or so since those times, I still feel to a certain degree that holds up, at least much more than any other country, in my opinion. Because, like, when Obama is elected, it's like a lot of people weren't happy. A lot of people were, but some were not. But life went on,
Right.
Think like your life did not come to a complete end because he was elected. And the same thing with Trump. Trump was elected. People were like, I'm going to Canada. It's like, yeah, good luck,
Right.
idiot.
Right.
It's true. More than half of these people are just talking smoke, and the other that actually did it, they're gonna realize Canada is not that haven utopia they really thought it was.
Talk is cheap, Alex. Talk is cheap, man.
It's true. That's why we're talking. Anyway.